She perceived him merely as a pitiable, frail, and utterly destitute mendicant. Daily, with her own severely limited provisions, she extended a hand, offering him sustenance. But one particular morning, amidst the familiar sights and sounds of her humble existence, everything underwent a profound and unexpected alteration. Who exactly was this unassuming individual she had been aiding? For what specific reason had he singled her out from the multitude? And what extraordinary, concealed truth had he meticulously kept hidden all along, waiting for this moment? Settle in comfortably and prepare to discover the answers as we delve into this truly astonishing, deeply moving, and unforgettable narrative of kindness and revelation. This compelling tale chronicles the interwoven lives of a genuinely humble and exceptionally resilient young woman named Ajoa and a crippled beggar who was a persistent target of local ridicule and disdain. Ajoa, a youthful soul barely into her mid-20s at just 24 years of age, operated a modest food stand constructed from aging timber and salvaged corrugated iron sheets strategically positioned along a busy roadside in the vibrant city of Kumasi. Her simple, makeshift structure was situated reassuringly beneath the wide canopy of a large, ancient tree, a common and welcoming gathering spot for hungry diners seeking affordable meals. Ajoa possessed remarkably little in terms of material wealth. Her worn sandals were threadbare, their straps near breaking, and her single dress displayed numerous carefully sewn patches, visible testaments to her struggle. Yet, despite these outward signs of hardship, she consistently wore a genuine, unwavering smile. Despite often feeling physically weary from her arduous routine, she invariably extended warmth, politeness, and heartfelt hospitality to every single person who approached her stand. "A pleasant afternoon, esteemed sir or madam. You are most welcome here," she would say with quiet dignity to each patron, regardless of their station. She rose long before the first hint of dawn daily to meticulously prepare nourishing meals like steaming rice and beans, or comforting yam porridge, the simple but fragrant staples of her business. While her skilled hands moved with impressive speed and efficiency in the preparation, her spirit privately carried a heavy sorrow. Ajoa was entirely without family, her parents having tragically passed away when she was merely a young child, leaving her to navigate the world alone. She resided in a tiny, Spartan chamber located not far from her stand, a confined space with no illumination beyond flickering lamplight, no running water, just her solitary self and her resilient, unyielding aspirations for a better future. One afternoon, while diligently cleaning her service counter, her acquaintance, a woman named Ngozi who sold vegetables nearby, passed by. "Ajoa," Ngozi commented, her voice laced with a touch of weary pragmatism, "why do you always appear so cheerful, so outwardly happy, when you face hardships just like the rest of us poor souls?" Ajoa offered another gentle smile, her eyes holding a quiet understanding, and replied simply, "Because shedding tears, no matter how many, won't fill my cooking pot, Ngozi." Ngozi chuckled softly and continued on her way, but her words resonated, finding a quiet home in Ajoa's heart. It was undeniably true, she owned virtually nothing of value. Yet, despite her own precarious situation, she still provided meals to others, even when they frankly lacked the means or willingness to pay. She was utterly oblivious, blissfully unaware, that her arduous, simple life was poised on the very cusp of a dramatic and profound transformation. Each afternoon, with the regularity of a clock, a peculiar and often unsettling occurrence marked the scene near Ajoa's humble stand. A disabled mendicant, a distinctively weary figure, would emerge slowly from the nearest street corner. He invariably approached with painful slowness, laboriously propelling his dilapidated, rickety wheelchair forward with his hands, his palms hardened and calloused by the effort. The worn wheels emitted a grating, persistent noise on the rough stone surface, creak, 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 a sound that grated on the nerves of onlookers as much as his appearance did. Those passing by often scoffed openly, whispered cruel remarks, or held their noses in overt disdain and revulsion. "Observe this soiled and broken man once more," one callous youth commented loudly enough for others to hear. The man's twisted limbs were bound in old, soiled bandages, layers of history and pain. His shorts were torn and frayed specifically at the knees, worn thin by constant use. His face was stained deeply with grime and etched with fatigue. His gaze seemed perpetually weary, haunted by unseen burdens. Some individuals openly claimed he emitted a genuinely unpleasant odor, others cruelly deemed him mentally unwell or unstable, but Ajoa, alone among the crowd, consistently regarded him with attentiveness and a quiet, gentle compassion. She affectionately referred to him in her thoughts, and sometimes softly aloud, as Baba Kofi. That day, under the relentless, scorching sun directly above, Baba Kofi propelled his chair to a halt alongside her establishment, settling into his usual spot beneath the tree's shade. Ajoa observed him carefully and spoke gently, her voice a soothing balm. "You've returned, Baba Kofi. I was worried. You missed your meal yesterday." Baba Kofi cast his gaze downwards, his face a mask of weariness. His voice, when he spoke, was faint, barely above a whisper. "I was too weak to come," he stated simply. "I haven't consumed anything at all, in 2 days." Ajoa surveyed her serving area, a familiar quick calculation of her own meager resources. Merely a single, solitary portion of rice and beans remained. This was the very meal she had explicitly intended for herself, her only sustenance until the following day's earnings, if any came. She hesitated for just a brief moment, a silent negotiation within herself. Then, without further utterance or fanfare, she picked up the plate, her final portion, and set it gently before him. "Here, Baba Kofi," she offered warmly. "Please eat this. All of it." Baba Kofi looked first at the simple plate of food, then slowly raised his eyes to meet hers. "You are offering me your final portion, again?" he asked, his voice tinged with surprise and perhaps a hint of shame. Ajoa simply affirmed with a soft smile. "Yes. I can prepare another meal for myself later, when I reach home tonight." His hands trembled visibly as he grasped the utensil, a worn wooden spoon. His tired eyes appeared moist, glistening slightly in the harsh light, but he did not weep openly. He simply lowered his head in quiet gratitude and commenced eating slowly, deliberately, savoring each precious mouthful. People walking by stared openly at them, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disapproval. "Ajoa," a woman called out, her voice sharp with judgment, "why do you constantly provide for that mendicant? He gives nothing in return." Ajoa smiled gently, her conviction unwavering, and replied, "If I were in his situation, confined to a chair and alone, would I not hope for someone, anyone, to assist me with simple kindness as well?" Baba Kofi appeared daily after that, his presence a quiet fixture, but he never solicited orally. He didn't call out to passers-by. He didn't extend his hands pleadingly. He neither implored for sustenance nor for funds. His routine was simply to quietly occupy his rickety chair near Ajoa's simple shop, a study in stillness. His head remained perpetually bowed, a picture of humility or perhaps resignation. His hands rested limply upon his legs, wrapped in their aged dressings. His wheelchair itself looked like it might collapse at any moment, its structure fragile and worn. One of its wheels even leaned conspicuously askew, threatening to give way entirely. While others deliberately ignored him, averted their gazes, or sneered, Ajoa consistently offered him a dish of warm food, a small beacon of kindness in his day. Sometimes it was flavorful spiced rice. Sometimes it was the hearty beans and yam porridge. She presented it always with a broad, genuine smile, a gesture that offered dignity along with nourishment. On a particularly warm afternoon, the air thick with the scent of cooking, Ajoa had just finished serving 2 schoolboys a plate of her popular spiced rice when she observed Baba Kofi once more, seated peacefully in his customary spot beneath the large tree. His legs remained swathed in their aged, tattered dressings. His garment now displayed additional tears and stains, but he simply remained there as always, a silent presence, saying nothing, asking for nothing. Ajoa smiled warmly, scooped a generous portion of hot spiced rice onto a plate, added 2 small, tender pieces of meat from her pot, and walked over to him, her steps light. "Baba Kofi," she addressed him gently, her voice carrying clearly but softly. "Your meal awaits you. Baba Kofi raised his gaze slowly, a movement heavy with fatigue. His eyes were tired, yes, but upon seeing Ajoa, his expression softened visibly, a flicker of light entering their depths. "You never overlook me," he stated quietly, the words a simple observation rather than a question. Ajoa knelt down gracefully and placed the food gently on the small, worn wooden stool she kept beside him for this purpose. "Even if everyone else in this world overlooks you," she affirmed, looking directly into his eyes, "I will not, Baba Kofi. Never." At that precise moment, a large, sleek dark vehicle, clearly expensive and out of place on this busy street, pulled up smoothly and halted directly before her humble establishment. The rear passenger door opened gradually, almost dramatically, and a gentleman emerged. He was dressed immaculately in a crisp white shirt and dark, tailored trousers. His polished footwear gleamed, reflecting the afternoon sun as though recently shined to perfection. He possessed a commanding height and a robust, authoritative physique with deep-set, piercing eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Ajoa rose swiftly from her kneeling position and instinctively wiped her hands on her apron, a gesture of deference and preparation. "A pleasant afternoon, esteemed sir," she greeted, her voice polite and respectful. "Good afternoon," the man responded, his tone neutral. However, his attention was not focused on her, it was fixed entirely upon Baba Kofi, who sat quietly eating. He didn't blink, he simply fixed his intense gaze upon him for an extended, unblinking duration. Baba Kofi continued eating, seemingly undisturbed, yet Ajoa, watching closely, perceived something unusual. He had ceased masticating, the fork paused halfway to his mouth. The gentleman moved nearer to the seated figure and tilted his head slightly, as though attempting to recall a long-forgotten memory, a half-buried image. He then turned slightly towards Ajoa and addressed her directly, his voice firm, "Kindly provide a plate of spiced rice. Include the protein portion." Ajoa promptly prepared the meal, her hands moving efficiently despite her rising curiosity, and handed it to him. But upon receiving the food, his purpose seemingly fulfilled for the moment, he glanced back at Baba Kofi one last time, a long, lingering look. His expression now conveyed not just observation, but a clear, palpable uncertainty, a puzzle he couldn't immediately solve. He opened the vehicle's door, entered without speaking another word, and the car departed as swiftly and silently as it had arrived, leaving Ajoa bewildered. The following morning, Ajoa awoke even earlier than usual, the strange encounter of the previous day lingering in her mind. She meticulously swept the area in front of her food stand and cleaned her wooden table until it gleamed, as was her unwavering custom. As daylight slowly broke over the city, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, she repeatedly scanned the thoroughfare, her eyes searching. "Any moment now," she murmured softly to herself, a quiet reassurance. "Baba Kofi will arrive." But the hours drifted by, marked only by the arrival of early customers and the growing warmth of the day. No rolling chair appeared, no familiar figure, simply, no Baba Kofi. By midday, her pulse quickened with a growing anxiety. She moved to the very edge of her stand and anxiously surveyed both directions of the lane. Craning her neck. Where could he possibly be, she wondered aloud, the question heavy with worry. She inquired of Ngozi, the woman selling vegetables nearby, her voice tight. "Auntie, have you seen Baba Kofi today? He wasn't here." Ngozi chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound, and waved her hand carelessly. "That old fellow. Perhaps he made his way to a different road today. What does it matter? He lacks the use of his limbs anyway," she added indifferently. Ajoa found no humor, only a deepening sense of dread. She questioned two lads vending packaged water bottles. "Have you observed the elderly man in the mobility aid? He sits by the big tree." They indicated negatively, their faces blank. She even sought information from the taxi rider parked nearby, a man who saw everything. "Sir, did you perhaps see Baba Kofi this morning, the man in the wheelchair?" The man expectorated casually onto the ground and commented, with a shrug, "Perhaps he grew weary of remaining in one place, Ajoa." Or perhaps, he added callously, he has finally departed this world. A heavy cloak of worry settled uncomfortably in Ajoa's chest. She seated herself beside her cooking vessel, the familiar heat offering no comfort, and stared fixedly at the vacant area where Baba Kofi always sat, an empty space that now felt profoundly significant. Her gaze remained locked on that empty, silent space for the remainder of the day. The entire day passed, and then a second subsequent day elapsed, followed by a third. Still, there was no trace whatsoever of Baba Kofi. Ajoa's usual, vibrant smile had completely vanished, replaced by a look of deep concern. She served customers automatically, her face appearing somber and preoccupied. She found it increasingly difficult to consume her own food, even the familiar, comforting aroma of her fragrant spiced rice made her feel unwell, her appetite gone. Her thoughts continuously dwelled, relentlessly, on Baba Kofi. Could something unfortunate, something terrible, have befallen him? She quietly mused to herself, a chill creeping into her thoughts. At night, she remained solitary in her modest dwelling behind the stand, the darkness amplifying her fears. She clutched the worn, simple ceramic plate from which he last ate, holding it like a precious relic, and regarded it with tear-filled eyes. Baba Kofi never skips a day, she murmured softly into the quiet room, recalling his unwavering presence. Even when rain falls heavily. Even when he is clearly unwell. Why, then, this sudden, inexplicable absence now? She rose slowly, opened her small window, and peered into the darkened thoroughfare outside, the street illuminated only by distant lights. A cool current of air entered the chamber, her vision blurred with moisture, unshed tears welling up. Her feelings transcended mere concern, she was gripped by a profound, gnawing apprehension. A sense of deep unease prevailed, settling over her like a heavy blanket. Profoundly, intensely so. And deep within her, a silent, intuitive knowing took root. Baba Kofi was not merely absent, something significant, something potentially perilous or life-altering, had occurred. It was now the fourth consecutive day since Baba Kofi's disappearance. Ajoa was seated calmly at her stand, going through the familiar motions, trying to impose a sense of normalcy onto her anxious heart. She was slicing onions, the pungent aroma stinging her eyes, and arranging her counter precisely as she did each morning. Smoke rose steadily from the small fire as she boiled water for the rice, the steam a comforting, familiar presence. At that precise instant, a large, distinctive dark automobile, unmistakably the same one from days before, halted smoothly and silently before her shop. A tall gentleman exited the vehicle. This man was different from the first, he wore a vivid crimson head covering, a mark of distinction. His footwear, like the first man's, was impeccably polished, gleaming in the morning light, and his attire appeared costly, custom-made. Ajoa had not encountered him previously. He did not smile. He did not offer a greeting. He simply approached her counter with a serious, focused demeanor and presented her with a small, tan-colored envelope. Ajoa regarded it with utter confusion, her brows furrowed. What is this? She inquired hesitantly, holding the envelope gingerly with both hands, unsure what to do. The man offered no verbal response, his face expressionless. He merely instructed, his voice low and firm, peruse its contents and disclose it to no one. Maintain absolute secrecy. He then turned abruptly and walked back towards the waiting car. Before Ajoa could articulate further questions or objections, the vehicle accelerated swiftly away, disappearing down the street. She looked left, her eyes scanning. She looked right. Nobody else seemed to be observing the unusual interaction, the busy street life continued around her, oblivious. Her hands trembling noticeably, she slowly unfolded the envelope, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Within lay a single sheet of pale, thick paper. She unfolded the paper slowly, her fingers tracing its edge. It contained only a brief, concise message, stark against the white paper. Kindly proceed immediately to Golden Sands Resort by 4 p.m. today. Maintain complete secrecy. From a friend. Ajoa remained motionless, frozen in place. Her mouth parted slightly in disbelief, but no words emerged. Her hands began to quake, the paper rustling softly. Golden Sands Resort, she murmured quietly to herself, the name foreign and intimidating. But I have never visited such an establishment in my entire life. I don't know where it is. She examined the note again, scanning the few words for any hidden meaning. Her heart pounded rapidly against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat. Who had dispatched this mysterious message? What manner of friend would send such a cryptic command? She looked down the road again, hoping to see the car, but it was long gone. She looked back at the paper, its reality undeniable in her hand. Ajoa clutched the envelope tightly to her chest, a strange talisman. She looked up at the sky, it was overcast, mirroring the uncertainty she felt within. But she was absolutely certain of one fact, a deep, unwavering intuition: she must comply with this strange, secret directive. Precisely at 3:30 p.m., leaving herself a little buffer time for the journey, Ajoa paused before her small business, the structure that represented her entire world until this moment. She looked at the lock in her hand, inhaled deeply, drawing strength, and carefully secured the wooden door, its familiar weight grounding her slightly. She turned the key twice, a deliberate, final click. "Creator, please accompany me and guide my steps," she whispered, a quiet prayer offered to the heavens. She proceeded to the roadside, stepping out of the familiar comfort zone of her stand, and hailed a passing three-wheeled vehicle, a common mode of transport. Golden Sands Resort, she directed the operator, her voice attempting to sound confident despite her inner turmoil. As they traversed the bustling, chaotic avenues of Kumasi, weaving through traffic and crowds, Ajoa clutched the tan envelope firmly in her hand, its presence a tangible link to the mystery. Her pulse was accelerated, a constant reminder of the unknown. She was utterly ignorant of the letter's originator beyond the word friend. She was completely unaware of what awaited her at this grand, unfamiliar destination, yet an inner conviction, a strong sense of destiny, suggested this was no typical day, but a turning point. Following a brief interval that felt simultaneously endless and fleeting, they arrived at the resort's grand, imposing entrance. Ajoa gazed upwards, her neck craning. The structure soared high into the sky, a monument of luxury, with windows resembling vast sheets of gleaming glass. The exterior walls were pristine, impossibly clean, and the main entrance was grand and gleaming, an aperture into a different world. Her surroundings seemed utterly surreal, like a figment of a lavish dream she had never dared to imagine. Two stern-faced guards were posted by the gate, their presence a formidable barrier. One, wearing dark, mirrored spectacles that obscured his eyes, regarded Ajoa and stepped forward, his posture rigid. "Good afternoon, esteemed lady," he inquired, his voice formal and detached. "Whom are you here to meet within our establishment?" Ajoa slowly parted her lips, her throat dry. I received this correspondence," she stammered slightly, presenting the document, her hand trembling. "It instructs me to come here, to this place. My designation is Ajoa." The security personnel accepted the paper, his expression unreadable, examined it carefully, then, unexpectedly, he smiled, a brief, professional movement of his lips. "Ah, Ajoa." "Yes," he stated, his tone shifting slightly. "There is someone important expecting your arrival within. You may enter." Immediately, as if on cue, a gentleman clad in a dark, impeccably tailored suit emerged smoothly from the glass entrance doors, an almost silent figure in black. He approached Ajoa directly, his steps measured. His words were minimal, his demeanor all business. "Please accompany me," he instructed, his voice quiet but firm, turning back towards the luxurious interior of the resort without waiting for her response. Ajoa trailed behind him, feeling small and out of place. Her limbs felt unsteady, as though she were walking on water, but she continued forward, propelled by a force beyond her understanding. The figure in dark attire guided her along an extensive, hushed corridor, the plush carpet muffling their footsteps. He then paused, stopping before a grand, imposing wooden portal, its surface gleaming. He faced her, his expression neutral but expectant, and announced, "Someone is awaiting you within this room." Ajoa's heart throbbed with even greater intensity now, a frantic bird trapped in her chest. She looked at the door, its size intimidating. Then she looked at the man who had guided her here. "May I enter now?" she inquired, her voice barely a whisper, filled with apprehension and anticipation. The man nodded, a simple, reassuring gesture. "Yes," he confirmed softly. "Simply proceed inside. You are secure here. There is nothing to fear." Ajoa inhaled deeply, gathering her courage, a deep breath filling her lungs. Then she gently pushed the grand entrance open, the heavy door swinging inward smoothly. Her gaze immediately fixed upon the individual seated in a mobility aid in the exact center of the spacious chamber. She became rooted to the spot, her feet glued to the polished floor. Her mouth parted in stunned disbelief. Her hands began to quake uncontrollably. "Baba Kofi," she exclaimed, clutching her chest as if to contain her wildly beating heart, the name escaping her lips in a choked whisper. Yet, this gentleman, seated before her, bore astonishingly little resemblance to the impoverished, broken figure who used to occupy the spot beside her humble stand. His hair was meticulously groomed, silver catching the light, styled neatly. His countenance appeared revitalized, healthy, radiant. He wore a pristine, gleaming white shirt adorned with elegant gold fasteners, a stark contrast to the rags she was used to seeing. A gleaming timepiece rested on his wrist, reflecting the light. He remained seated in a wheelchair, yes, but this one was distinctly different. It was clean, polished, modern, a piece of sophisticated equipment, not a relic of poverty. He did not appear feeble or exhausted. Instead, he exuded an aura of tranquility, poise, and quiet authority. He offered her a slow, deliberate smile, a smile that reached his eyes that were now clear and sharp. "Ajoa," he stated softly, his voice resonant and kind, the voice of Baba Kofi, yet somehow richer. "Please, do enter fully." Initially, Ajoa remained immobile, incapable of movement, her mind struggling to process the scene before her. Her heart raced, a frantic rhythm. She studied him once more, searching for the familiar features of the man she had fed. "Baba Kofi," she repeated, her voice filled with incredulity, is it truly you?" The man in the wheelchair met her gaze, his eyes holding a deep warmth. "Indeed, Ajoa. It is I," he affirmed gently. He indicated the comfortable seat opposite him, an invitation extended with grace. "Kindly take a seat," he offered pleasantly, his voice calm and welcoming. Ajoa slowly settled onto the chair, her movements stiff, still regarding him as though she were suspended in a dream, a surreal, beautiful illusion. "My name," he stated gently, his smile softening, "is not Baba Kofi." Ajoa blinked, her mind struggling to keep up. "It is not," she whispered. He affirmed with a slight nod. "No. My actual name is Chief Kwesi. And I am a person of immense wealth." Ajoa placed both hands in her lap, her fingers interlaced, a gesture of shock. She stared at him, utterly astonished, the revelation washing over her. A billionaire," she whispered, awestruck, the word feeling foreign and immense on her tongue. Chief Kwesi affirmed again, his expression serene. "Yes, Ajoa. I am the proprietor of numerous successful enterprises across this nation and beyond. I have established residences, built educational institutions, founded medical facilities, and invested in countless ventures. I have accumulated considerable fortune over the years." Ajoa appeared completely bewildered, her mind reeling. "But, why?" she stammered. Why did you simulate destitution? Why pretend to be a beggar?" He smiled again, yet his expression now held a profound gravity, a deeper purpose. "I desired to witness the authentic, unvarnished nature of individuals," he explained, his voice quiet but firm. I grew weary of assistance being rendered solely when perceived by others, for public admiration or self-interest. I sought to encounter someone who aids simply because it aligns with what is intrinsically right, with the goodness of their heart, regardless of external appearance or expectation of reward. He looked directly into Ajoa's eyes, his gaze filled with genuine admiration. You provided me sustenance, he continued softly. You offered it consistently, daily, with cheerfulness, even when you had so little yourself. You never solicited anything in return from me or anyone else. You didn't laugh at me, didn't scorn me, didn't turn away in disgust like so many others. He regarded her kindly, his eyes conveying a deep respect. This, Ajoa, is the reason for your presence here today. Annually, I discreetly select 10 individuals who exhibit such rare, genuine compassion and unwavering kindness. I facilitate their path, providing the means for them to become millionaires, because people such as yourself, those with pure hearts, possess the extraordinary capacity to uplift others too, not just individually, but on a grander scale. Ajoa was still utterly stunned, struggling to process the magnitude of Chief Kwesi's revelations, the sudden, dramatic shift in reality. Chief Kwesi offered a slight, knowing smile, understanding her speechless state. Then, deliberately, with an air of quiet purpose, he positioned both hands firmly on the chair's armrests. Ajoa leaned forward instinctively, observing him intently, her heart still racing. And then, with a slow, steady movement, he rose to his feet. Her eyes widened considerably, growing impossibly large. Her jaw dropped open, a silent gasp escaping her lips. You are able to walk," she stammered in utter disbelief, the words catching in her throat. Chief Kwesi nodded, his movements fluid and strong, a stark contrast to the brokenness she had perceived. "Yes," he confirmed softly, his voice gentle. "I can ambulate. I can walk freely." Ajoa reclined back in her seat, her body feeling suddenly weak, still watching him as if confronting a specter, a miraculous apparition. "But why?" she questioned, the words tumbling out, confusion etched on her face. "Why occupy the chair throughout this long period? Why pretend to be crippled?" He met her gaze, his expression holding a profound depth of purpose, and responded, "I wish to ascertain if anyone, truly anyone, would still show concern, care, and compassion for me when I appeared broken, when I had nothing to offer in return. Even in a state of apparent helplessness and brokenness, I wanted to discern those individuals, like you, with a truly noble and kind heart, those who see the person beyond the facade of suffering." Ajoa's lips began to tremble, the emotion overwhelming her. Her eyes grew visibly moist. The welling tide of tears impossible to hold back. A single, large tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. I didn't assist you," she stated in a hushed, choked tone, her voice thick with emotion, out of expectation for anything in return. I was completely unaware of your wealth, of who you truly were. I simply felt it was the appropriate course of action, the right thing to do, to help someone in need." Chief Kwesi smiled once more, a genuine, warm expression, and gently approached her, standing now beside her chair. "That, Ajoa," he declared softly, his voice filled with admiration, "is precisely why I selected you. Your simple, unbidden kindness was the most valuable treasure I found." Chief Kwesi paused silently for a moment, allowing the weight of his words to settle, his gaze upon Ajoa filled with a profound benevolence and respect. Then, he stated, his voice inviting, "Ajoa, come with me now. There is somewhere else, something else, I wish for you to see, something I have prepared." She looked up at him, taken aback once more, surprised by this new direction. Somewhere else, she echoed, still processing the initial revelation. "Indeed," he replied with a broad, encouraging smile. "I wish to unveil something significant to you now. It constitutes a part of your recompense, a tangible expression of my gratitude. You possess an extraordinarily generous spirit, a truly kind heart, and individuals like you, Ajoa, merit profoundly favorable outcomes in life." Ajoa rose slowly from her seat, her legs still feeling a little shaky, but her resolve firming. "All right," she agreed, her voice calm but filled with a hopeful uncertainty, ready for whatever came next. Chief Kwesi pivoted smoothly and opened the grand doorway, stepping out into the corridor. Ajoa followed him, her steps quiet on the plush carpet. The passage outside the room was hushed, filled with an air of expectation. Two gentlemen in dark business attire were already awaiting them outside the door, standing silently like sentinels. They acknowledged Chief Kwesi with respectful nods and immediately fell into step behind them, forming a small, distinguished procession. Ajoa surveyed her surroundings as they walked, the opulent decor, the quiet efficiency of the staff. The entire experience retained a dreamlike quality, surreal and almost unbelievable. Upon exiting the building into the bright afternoon light, her mouth fell open in fresh astonishment. 5 substantial dark utility vehicles, sleek and powerful, were aligned perfectly in the parking area, a formidable fleet. They gleamed with a mirror-like polish, reflecting the sky. Large, imposing figures in dark suits stood respectfully adjacent to each one, their presence commanding. Chief Kwesi proceeded directly to the lead vehicle, the first in the impressive line. One of the men standing by it promptly opened the rear door for him. Ajoa remained stationary for a moment, her eyes wide, utterly stunned by the display of wealth and power. Chief Kwesi glanced back over his shoulder and smiled gently, an encouraging expression. "Step inside, Ajoa," he invited softly. She inhaled deeply, a deliberate act to steady herself, and consciously entered the opulent automobile, sinking into the plush leather seat. As soon as the door secured with a solid thud, the remaining vehicles smoothly formed a procession behind them. The cavalcade of 5 large vehicles exited the resort's entrance like a scene from a cinematic production, moving with quiet purpose onto the public road. Ajoa sat silently beside Chief Kwesi, her heart pounding rapidly with anticipation and wonder. Where was he escorting her with this display of force? And what extraordinary thing was he about to unveil now? The vehicles progressed steadily through the urban landscape, navigating the familiar streets of Kumasi. Ajoa occupied the seat beside Chief Kwesi, observing the passing scenery through the tinted window. She saw people bustling, shops open, familiar buses in motion, but her thoughts were utterly overwhelmed by a torrent of unanswered inquiries. Their destination remained a mystery. Approximately half an hour later. After traversing the city, the automobiles turned onto a pristine, remarkably tranquil avenue, a stark contrast to the bustling roads they had left behind. The structures in this vicinity appeared uniformly contemporary and refined, radiating an air of prosperity and modernity. Glass facades, gleaming signage, fresh paint everywhere bespoke a newly developed or highly affluent area. The vehicles then came to a halt, lining up neatly along the curb. Chief Kwesi opened his door and stepped out, his movements unhurried. A security attendant promptly opened Ajoa's door as well, assisting her as if she were royalty. "Join me, Ajoa," Chief Kwesi invited, smiling gently, his voice full of anticipation. Then, her gaze fixated, her eyes widening in disbelief. Directly before her stood a grand and magnificent edifice, a building of impressive scale and elegant design. It was far, far more than a mere shop, it was a luxurious eatery, a high-end restaurant befitting a multimillionaire, precisely the type of establishment only affluent individuals frequented, a place she had only ever seen from afar or in pictures. It stood in solitary splendor, broad and imposing, with expansive glass facades that extended dramatically from top to bottom, offering views into a world of culinary artistry. The exterior walls were pristine and smooth, resembling polished, cream-colored stone, radiating a sense of understated elegance. The entryways featured gleaming golden handles, reflecting the sun. Carefully arranged floral displays adorned the entrance, adding a touch of natural beauty. Ajoa's mouth simply gaped open, unable to form words. She had never encountered anything of this magnitude, anything so beautiful and grand, in her entire existence. However, the most astonishing, the most unbelievable element, was the large, elegantly designed external placard, prominently displayed. It proclaimed, in beautiful, clear lettering, Ajoa's hearth, repository of delectable cuisine. Ajoa retreated a step, her hand flying to her mouth. She re-examined the inscription, reading it again and again, desperately trying to ensure her vision was not deceiving her, that this wasn't some cruel illusion. Is this genuinely so? She inquired in a hushed, trembling tone, her voice barely audible. Chief Kwesi gently nodded, his smile unwavering. Yes, Ajoa, he confirmed softly. It belongs to you. All of it. To me, she whispered, the concept almost too vast to grasp. He reached into his garment and produced a heavy set of keys, gleaming in his hand, extending them towards Ajoa and indicating the entrance with a sweep of his hand. Step inside, he invited again. Ajoa accepted the keys, their weight feeling surprisingly substantial in her palm, and proceeded deliberately, her movements slow and uncertain, towards the entrance she had just admired from afar. Her hands trembled noticeably as she inserted the largest key into the lock. She unlocked the entrance and gently pushed the door open. The sight within compelled her to cover her mouth with both hands, a physical manifestation of her overwhelming emotion. The polished flooring gleamed brilliantly, reflecting the light like a sheet of water. The seating was ample, plush, and inviting, upholstered in rich fabrics. The dining surfaces appeared crafted from glass and polished gold, catching and refracting the light. Illumination from the ceiling resembled celestial bodies, small, twinkling stars or perhaps tiny suns, casting a warm, ambient glow. The atmosphere was imbued with a crisp, clean scent, a fragrance of newness and luxury. Everything, absolutely everything, was pristine, perfect, and flawless, radiating an aura of expense and quality. A spacious culinary area was situated towards the rear, a chef's dream. Within, she observed state-of-the-art gas ranges, gleaming stainless steel cookware hanging neatly, large freezers and refrigeration units filled with potential, and even racks of pristine white uniforms and head coverings for staff members. She slowly pivoted to face Chief Kwesi, who had followed her inside and now stood quietly beside her, his presence a comforting anchor in this whirlwind of emotion. Her eyes were brimming uncontrollably with tears, the dam of her emotions finally breaking. You procured all of this," she choked out, struggling to speak through her tears. "All of this, for me." Chief Kwesi entered fully and stood beside her, placing a reassuring hand gently on her shoulder. "Yes, Ajoa," he affirmed softly, his voice filled with compassion. "I did. You nourished me with your meager funds, your own final portions, when you yourself possessed nothing but kindness. Now, I desire to bestow upon you a venue, a magnificent haven, where even royalty will feel welcome to dine. You shall never again experience hardship, hunger, or worry about tomorrow." Ajoa, overcome with gratitude and disbelief, sank to her knees right there on the gleaming floor, her hands obscuring her face as she surrendered to the moment. She wept openly, deep, cleansing sobs, yet these were tears not of sorrow, but of overwhelming joy and profound relief. I am at a loss for words," she uttered, her voice muffled by her hands. "There is no need for expression, Ajoa," Chief Kwesi responded gently, kneeling beside her. "Your extraordinary compassion, your unwavering kindness, has already articulated everything on your behalf, far more eloquently than any words ever could." From that pivotal juncture, Ajoa ascended to the helm, assuming leadership of a significant, renowned culinary complex in the heart of Kumasi. It bore absolutely no resemblance whatsoever to her previous, humble roadside stand. The contrast was immense, a world apart. This new establishment was magnificent, a beacon of fine dining. The surfaces gleamed constantly under the soft lighting. The walls featured refined lighting fixtures that cast a warm glow. The seating was soft, plush, and spotless. Gentle melodies permeated the background, creating a harmonious ambience. A sense of serenity and quiet luxury enveloped patrons upon entry. She no longer personally prepared meals herself, nor did she serve them directly to customers. Highly skilled chefs managed the kitchen operations with precision and artistry. They wore pristine white coats and matching head coverings, moving with efficiency. Service staff, smartly attired and radiating professionalism, smiled genuinely as they presented beautifully plated food. Ajoa simply occupied her executive office situated on the upper level, a space that was hers alone. Her name adorned the entrance to the office. Her likeness was displayed respectfully on the wall. She commanded universal respect from her employees and patrons alike, known not just for her success but for the story behind it. But even notwithstanding the wealth, the ease, the recognition, the comfort, she never, ever overlooked her origins. She never forgot the struggling young woman under the tree. She never forgot Baba Kofi, the man who tested her and changed everything. And she never forgot the transformative, profound impact that a simple act of compassion had on her existence. One morning, her operations director, a competent and dedicated man, entered her spacious workspace with a sense of purpose. "Madam," he announced respectfully, "the mobile food unit is fully prepared and awaiting your inspection." Ajoa rose from her desk, a familiar fire in her eyes. "Excellent," she stated, her voice clear and decisive. "Let us proceed immediately." Outside the establishment, parked prominently, a substantial white vehicle awaited, clean and ready. Emblazoned boldly on the side of the conveyance, in vibrant, hopeful lettering, was a designation, Ajoa's Harvest, sustaining the needy. Ajoa had initiated a major philanthropic endeavor, a direct extension of her own journey. Each week, her food vehicles circulated systematically throughout the urban area of Kumasi, reaching out to those often forgotten. They distributed generous, complimentary meals to impoverished individuals sheltering beneath overpasses, near busy transit points, and within market vicinities, places where need was most visible. People queued patiently, their faces etched with hardship but also expressions of genuine gratitude. Some were without footwear, their feet bare on the ground. Some were young children, their eyes wide with hunger. Some were elderly gentlemen, their bodies frail. Ajoa herself often accompanied the unit, approaching each person, extending not just warm nourishment but a kind word and a smile. She encouraged them, "Partake heartily. Eat until you are full. You have not been overlooked, not anymore." One of her employees, a young man learning the ropes, softly inquired, his voice filled with admiration, "Madam, what specifically motivates this action? Why give so much away?" Ajoa slowly raised her gaze, looking not just at the employee, but outwards at the people receiving the food. She gently placed a hand upon her heart, her expression serene but profound. "Benevolence," she replied softly, her voice filled with deep conviction, "guided me to this position of abundance and opportunity. Therefore, I feel compelled, truly compelled, to extend that benevolence outwards once more, to those who need it most, just as I once did." The employee nodded silently, understanding dawning in his eyes. And as they collectively observed the populace consuming their meals with quiet dignity and visible smiles, the sunlight illuminated Ajoa's countenance tenderly, a gentle, golden light. She directed her gaze skyward for a brief moment and softly murmured, a private acknowledgement, "Thank you, Chief Kwesi. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for remembering me." She then turned, her purpose renewed, returned to the vehicle, and drove onward, the Ajoa's Harvest unit moving towards the subsequent area of the city in need. Her life had undergone an irreversible transformation, a complete revolution, yet her core essence, the kind heart that had started it all, remained wonderfully, beautifully unaltered.